Hello and welcome into another episode of Damage Plan MMA Podcast, presented by Fierce Challengers Series 4. On today's show, we've got Zack Partridge, the COO and matchmaker of Fierce Fighting Championship. We chat about the upcoming card on March 18th at Clearfield High School, as well as how he landed his dream job with Fierce FC. For tickets, head over to fiercefightingchampionship.com before this event sells out. You can also purchase the pay-per-view at that website if you were unable to attend. So without further ado, here is myself with Zack Partridge. And right now we are joined by none other than Zack Partridge, the COO and matchmaker of Fierce Fighting Championship. And Zack, we have an incredible card coming up this upcoming week. Can you tell us a little bit about it and what you're looking forward to?
Yeah, I think I'm looking forward to the most the overall talent that's on this card. The few Challenger series that we've had, we've seen a lot of talent come from those. Vili Kulu started at Challenger Series 1. We've seen Johan Rubio make his pro debut on Challenger Series. Challenger Series 2, when we kind of switched to the high school venue and tried that out, that was really fun. I don't know. I feel like top to bottom, this might be the deepest talent pool that we've had top to bottom on a Challenger Series card, of known fighters and what they're bringing. We've had a lot more debuters on other ones, but yeah, I'm pretty excited for this card.
I kind of wanted to talk a little bit about just your time with Fierce. I mean, you talk so much about the different fighters and things like that. But I mean, talking about you a little bit, you're almost a year into this thing. You've been doing this for just about a year, which is pretty crazy to think. But how fast has this year gone by, and how did you kind of get into it?
Well, I mean, that's how I got into it. I mean, I've always wanted to work in sports. I've been a sports junkie my whole life. People that know me know of like football, baseball, basketball. Like, I mean, my dream job growing up was I wanted to play in the NFL, or whatever. And then you realize, the NFL is not super interested in, 6 foot white dudes that can't run a 4.3 40 to play wide receivers. So no, so it's I don't know. I just always wanted to work in sports, and I was like, I wanted to be a scout or like a general manager or something, work for a sports organization. And I looked into that, and it's just really hard. But I found MMA, and I started like 6 years ago. I signed up at One Hit MMA. It'll be 6 years ago in 3 weeks. And I fell in love with this sport. I'm 34. It's like, I know that even when I won my first amateur title, I knew I wasn't going to make a career out of this. I'm not going to the UFC. I'm not like that. That ceiling really wasn't much higher than what I'd already done. I might be able to take a couple pro fights or whatever, but really I'm too old. There's too many young killers. There's too many Cole Fausts in the world. There's too many Dietrich Jessups that are young. There's too many Will Deans. There's too many Andrew Mickelsons, Vili Kulus. I mean, there's too many of those guys in the amateur ranks. Those are the guys that are going places. David Kim, like all those young kids. Those are the guys, and I just know I believe in myself, but I'm realistic, and so I started shifting a couple of years ago, looking for opportunities to potentially work for promotions. Grateful that we have the Damage Plan MMA podcast, Jason Laporte and myself. That gave me a platform into Cody asking me eventually to be the color commentator, for Fierce. And I kind of shared some of those things with him. And there's a lot to it, but ultimately at the end of the day, I was weighing different options, even potentially looking at starting my own promotion. And Cody believed in me and knows that I have a passion for the sport, and asked me to just come run Fierce.
I mean, to kind of personalize this a little bit, it kind of is funny how Cody was to you as you were to me. You gave me a call, you gave me an opportunity, and now, I'm kind of doing the podcast thing. I'm kind of doing the commentary thing.
You're not
But
kind of doing it. You're doing it. You're killing it.
but what's funny about that is I have so much gratitude for you, but I kind of wanted to ask you a little bit about your gratitude for Cody. You always say that he gave you the keys to the Lamborghini and you got to ride it. You being here in this position, almost a year in, how much does this opportunity and how much weight is on your shoulders when you realize how big of an opportunity this is?
This is my dream job, man. I mean, running a sports organization like Fierce, it's my dream job. I asked around and asked for opportunities. Um, Cody was the first one that jumped on it, and he didn't just jump on it, like he went all in with me, and he's like, "You're the guy." And he was looking at he knew that he couldn't keep doing what he was doing by himself with Fierce. Um, I think, I don't mean to speak out of turn. I hope he doesn't mind me saying this. I think it's fair to say that Fierce was very close to going away if he couldn't find somebody else to at least support him and help him more, or just take it over for the most part. And when I say take it over, I'm still talking to Cody pretty much on a daily basis, asking his advice on stuff, getting his okay on stuff. He's very much still in the picture, as far as that stuff. But I mean, he lets me take it and run. I mean, there are cards where he doesn't really even know the matchups till they get posted online. Like, so he really put a lot of faith in me and gave me the green light to take it and run. And I appreciate that. I mean, it feels good to. It feels. I think that the most thing that I appreciate, I think he felt like how genuinely I loved it, and I just wanted to do good for MMA in Utah. I don't. I've had some people say some really nice things about me lately. They've reached out and say, "Hey, you guys are doing a great job. You're giving a great venue to the pros to make so that a lot of the professional fighters don't have to leave the state to go fight." We see that in boxing. We have a lot of amateur boxing. Like, we don't have a ton of great boxing scene where amateurs can do their amateur and then pro careers here. A lot of them have to leave after a few fights. I just didn't want that to be Utah. Like, we have too much good talent here in state. Like, those guys deserve to have every opportunity to fight here in Utah. And I just appreciate that all the work that Cody's done to kind of get the ball rolling with that, and have some more professional fighter heavy cards at the Maverick Center. I don't think people fully understand how much work goes into putting on a show at a venue like the Maverick Center. I certainly didn't till I got to peek behind the curtain and see everything that goes behind it. It's made me have a lot of respect for every promoter that I've ever criticized or rubbed shoulders with or whatever. That, man, if you've been in the promoting game, it's a hard game, and I appreciate Cody doing it, laying the groundwork, and believing in me that I can do it. And I feel like we're doing it, and we're doing it very well right now.
When we just talk personally about where the promotion's going, where you want it to go, your dreams and aspirations of it, how big do you think and how big do you want this thing to go? I know you have big plans, but really, how big, if you can kind of peel back the curtain a little bit for the audience, how big do you think that Fierce can get?
I don't know how much I want to say. I might sound crazy with it. I look around. I mean, I watch a lot of MMA. I watch a lot of Fight Pass. I watch other shows. I enjoy it. We have fierce fighters that I mean, I'm a fan of the sport. I always said I was more of a fan than a fighter. And yeah, I'm a promoter and stuff too, but I'm still a big fan of a lot of these guys. We get a lot of guys that, come up and fight for Fierce, and then they go off and, they're fighting at Tough Enough or LFA or Bellator, or even we have UFC, Chris Curtis, right? Like, I mean, we have guys that have fought for us recently that are fighting in these other shows, and I watch them all, and I follow Ryder Newman, who fought for us. I follow these guys. Aleko Pointar is he's fought for us, and he's fighting in Louisiana coming up. Victor Lapari, he's fighting back home in Pennsylvania to go to fight under Fury. I mean, I watch these guys, so I watch all over the place. I think we are on track. You say, how big can we get? Um, I don't think, this is just my humble opinion. The UFC is always going to be the brand, especially here in the United States. I'm very interested to see ONE FC's coming to Colorado this year. I'm very excited to see the waves that they cause in this country. I watch a lot of ONE. I love their stuff. Um, I don't know why, but it seems like Bellator's marketing is lacking. But I think those three are pretty much untouchable, right? Like that's in some order, it'll always be those three. LFA and their connection with the UFC will always keep them high. Long story short, I think we can be I think we can be the top regional show in the West and one of the top three regional shows in the country in the next few years. I don't think we're that far off actually in a lot of cases. There's a couple things that we need to upgrade and do, but if you want me to be totally honest, I think Fierce could very well be a household name that we see on some big platforms, streaming wise, potentially even by the end of this year.
Can you tell us just some of the pros and cons, what you've learned about yourself and what you've learned in this position? You talked about promotion and how it is a difficult job, but it also is your dream job. What are some of the pros and cons specifically that you have when it comes to what you do for Fierce?
So, I mean, I'm an entrepreneur at heart, and this is a business at the end of the day. I think that's one of the hardest things is um, is removing some of the business aspects from dealing with fighters and caring about the fighters as people. Um, I've had employees before where at the end of the day, business always came first. And if the employees didn't like it, it was like tough, get out. But I have a real soft spot for a lot of these fighters that they're just trying, and I know that they're trying and they want to make it. We how do I want to say this? I've dealt with a fighter that this one just comes to mind because it's a little bit fresher. He just said, "Man, I want to fight and I want to fight for you guys so bad because I don't have the money to get my medicals done and I don't have the money to travel to Salt Lake City to fight." And I was like, "Are you trying to pull out or whatever?" And it was just like, he just adamantly, and I just believed him. And it's just, yeah, it cost us a little bit extra money to keep him on a card and make that fight happen. But, I wanted to give him his shot and see if he was really about it. But two, the other soft part was, yeah, it might cost us a few extra $100, but I can't do that to his opponent, who's put in a full camp. That's some of like the hard stuff where it's like, from a business aspect, probably should have just cut the fight off the card and said tough, you know.
Yeah.
That's the type of stuff when I say the pros and cons, it's like it's some of that stuff that's the type of stuff that I feel like is hard to deal with. I think the pros have been, I really think that people understand how much I love the sport and that I'm trying to do what's best for the sport. I don't, and we're just, and the positive feedback that we're getting from people that say, "Hey, I really hope to fight for Fierce one day," or "I really want to fight for Fierce," and things like that. I think that's the biggest pro, is that the feedback that we're getting constantly makes me know that we're going in the right direction. Which, when you're building a business in any sense, like that's always a hard thing to gauge, is, are we really, like, are we heading in the right direction? I think the pro is the satisfaction of just seeing these cards grow. The crowds are growing show to show. The buzz is growing more and more around Fierce. We've gone now to We did 7 cards last year. We're doing 11 this year. Um, I like building things in general, and I think we're building something really special here. And watching the progress of the fighters, but also watching, the Fierce team grow. It was Cody forever. He brought me in. I brought my people in. We brought you in. We brought, we brought a whole team in now that it's like, I love our team. That's been one of the best is watching the team form on the people that we know are all in, and then the people that maybe weren't all in, let them go their own path too.
I kind of got the feeling, and just you can tell me if this is true or not. It seems like you as a promoter, it's fighters before everything. It's fighters are the main priority, making sure that they are taken care of, happy, and make sure that they enjoy their time fighting for you. And from what I've heard, it seems like every fighter comes back and says, this is the most professional regional show I've ever been on. This is one of the best, opportunities I've ever had been a part of. Is that something that you, one, take pride in, but two, are striving for?
Absolutely. I mean, yeah, I take a lot of pride in that. I mean, I've had 7 amateur fights, and uh, for Steel Fist, and Steel Fist, they do a lot of things really well. But there are things where I said, as a fighter, I wish this was different. Well, I can control that now. So I can take the things that I see from their show. I can take things from other shows. I watch all these shows. And I can take things and I go, I like this about this show. We need to implement that with Fierce. I have the power to do that now. As long as it's financially, makes sense and stuff, and makes it so we don't, lose money. But yeah, I mean, I do take pride in that. I want fighters to I want fighters to want to fight for us again. And I mean, we've done how many shows now? I think I've done like 10 shows. Is that how many I've done?
I
I think this
believe.
is my 10th show. I think this is my 10th show. Um, I you know I haven't heard a fighter say yet, I'll never come back and fight for Fierce again.
Yeah.
I do take pride in that, and I think that and it is. I mean, when me and Jason started the Damage Plan podcast, like our little slogan was for the fighters. Like that's fighters. People don't understand. I do. I defend Dana White a lot because I especially now I understand how hard his job is. But I mean, I probably don't understand how hard his job is on a micro level. I understand how hard his job is, but he there's just so much that people don't understand. But at the same time, too, like coming up as a fighter, I can't think really of a harder sport to decide to come up in as be a professional. I mean, usually when you make it to the big leagues, like you're financially set for at least years, if not your life. And even those UFC guys, like they're just scraping by. Like my goal is my goal in growing Fierce is growing it to a show that we're known as the best paying regional show. Not
Yeah.
just take care of them, but like be able to financially pay them too, so that they can feel like it's a worthwhile investment financially for what they're going through.
Yeah, you talk a little bit about you and Jason and kind of those early days of Damage Plan and everything that you guys did. And it really was like, I don't mean to use this as hyperbole. I truly believe this. It was legendary what you guys were able to put together for those 200 plus episodes that you did. And that was the big thing, was it was always about the fighters first. And just as someone who watched it, as someone who followed it, and as someone who's kind of, taking over this, I do just applaud both of you. A little shout out to Jason. I'm sure he'll be listening to this. Jason has done so much for me, so much for Fierce, and so much for all of us. And so I just really appreciate both of you guys. So let's jump into some of those fighters. Let's jump into this card a little bit. Zack, when you look at this card, it is stacked top to bottom, 11 fights. I've got a handful that I personally am looking forward to, but this is about you. Talk to us a little bit about some of the fights that fly off the page for you.
The first one for me, I mean, I'm interested, I am very, gosh, we'll go through the whole thing. Isaac Allen is from Agema, and he's Andrew Mickelson's nephew or cousin, I believe. So I'm really interested to see that. Uh, we've talked about. I think Nate Reinhardt probably the best debut performance that didn't get a hand raise that I've ever seen.
Ever. 100%.
And the kid that's coming up from Vegas to fight him, Edward Gastelum, is like all about fighting, and he's so excited to get a chance to fight finally. Seems super gung ho. Like I think that one's could be. I think that could be bonkers. The first one, I mean, stands out. Brendan Myers, Tony Garcia. It's one of those fights that I don't want to see either of them lose. I really don't. I like both of them a ton. Like when Tony came up and made his debut against one of my teammates, like I became a huge fan of the kid, and I really like Tony a lot. I really like Brendan a lot. It's like that's actually one of the hardest parts about matchmaking is sometimes you have to make fights that you don't want either of them to lose, and that sucks. That is a part of this job that I absolutely hate. The Bethany Silva Melody Schrock fight, I think, could be one of the most interesting on the card. Bethany's 0-0, but from everything I heard, she's an just absolute monster. And Melody beat Nicole. I mean, I know MMA math doesn't work, but the way that Melody beat Nicole Funga with a really slick armbar, right?
It was an armbar from her back.
From her back. And how good Nicole looked against Sasha Lopez, and how good Sasha Lopez looked at her pro debut against a very experienced one. You know what I mean? And I'm like, how good is Melody?
Yeah.
And so it's like I'm very interested because everybody keeps telling me how good Bethany is, and I'm sitting there. I'm like, I'm sure she's very, very good. How good is Melody? It's like that. I think that could be a very, very, very interesting, very interesting fight.
I'll say this from an unbiased standpoint since I'm calling the fight, but that to me is sneakily fight of the night right there. That is
I think it is for me too.
Interesting matchups of the entire card.
I think for an 0-0 versus a 1-0, I don't think people understand probably how good of a fight that's going to be.
Yeah, I completely agree.
I'm really high on Brendan Ferreira. I have been since the first time I watched him fight. I think he's a phenomenal striker, and he has a lot of upside. I believe in the kid a lot, and I like him. I also know that Dustin Jones is put on one of the best fights in Fierce history in Fierce 2 against a kid named Carson Anderson, who's actually a sponsor of this show with his tree cutting company. I mean, MMA world's so small, like it's so funny, but they put on an absolute war down in Price back at Fierce 2, and for him to come back after how many years is it? Like
it's so it'll be six years.
That's wild. I mean, that's
2016, I believe, was Fierce 2.
I mean, that's going to be, I think that one could be just a stand-up just war that could be really, really interesting. And David Kim, his layoff. John Smith just fought. John's super scrappy. David's, we all know his accolades and how good he is. Like, I think that's a really, really interesting fight.
The two of them are both just very creative on the feet. I'm really excited to see where the fight goes. I think it can go anywhere, and John Smith has long enough of a career. David obviously has his pedigree, and so between the two of them, I think it's two of the highest IQs of the entire night. Those two guys are going to go and have a very, very high level, high IQ match, I think.
And I'm just going to say this about John Smith. I do get messages from fighters more than people would think. This is, I'll fight anybody. I'll fight anybody. I'll fight anybody, anytime, anywhere. I'll do this. I'll do that. And John Smith said, I'll fight anybody, anytime, anywhere. Like after his last fight, as soon as he was healthy, he's like, just so you know, like I'd fight. He'd fight on every card if he could. And he's like, I'll fight anybody, anytime, anywhere. And when this opportunity came up, it was like, I'm in. Let me make sure I clear it with my coaches. Like I'll fight anybody all the time. And then I give them somebody and they're like, well, actually, that guy's pretty tough and I need a full camp to fight somebody like that. Or, oh, actually, I got this rib injury. I don't know if I'm going to be able to. Like, I get that all the time. And John Smith, but I'll fight anybody, anytime, anywhere. I offered him that like a week later and he was like, yep, let me just get the okay from my coaches. But yeah, I want it. Like I love that. People like that, like John Smith has a home with Fierce anytime he wants it.
No, hats off to him, taking the fight a little bit on short notice as well.
Oh yeah, it's like 2 weeks.
Yeah.
What was it? 2 weeks? 3 weeks? 3 weeks?
2.5-ish weeks, and
Yeah.
just 35 days removed from the day that he's going to make that walk next week to his time fighting in Idaho. 35 days. I mean, that's a pretty quick turnaround.
Done. Yeah. He's already asked me. He's like, "Can I fight in May? Can I fight back in Idaho again in June?" I'm just like, one at a time. But yeah, I mean,
I love
I'll put him on any card he wants. If he's healthy, I'll put him on a card.
I love it. A couple others that I'm really looking forward to: Nicole Funga versus Aaron. I'm not exactly sure. I will make sure that I know how to pronounce that by the time that we roll the cameras on Saturday. I'll make sure to talk to her. But I actually spoke to her via Instagram and stuff. Very, very nice lady and has a lot of wrestling. Very excited for her as well.
Yeah, that Nicole's tough. I think Nicole's doing some things the right way. I think she's taking a lot of hard fights young in her career, and she's not afraid to fight anybody. And I think not worrying about your record, but worrying about experience as an amateur is. And I know she's somebody that she's expressed interest in wanting to go far in this sport. She's not trying to pick and choose opponents, which I think is just. I think she's doing things the right way. So I give her hats off to that. Melody was Sasha Lopez as a debut, hard. Melody, hard. Aaron, it's another tough matchup, and she believes in herself, and she's learning and growing every fight, and I think that's phenomenal for her.
I'm going to say this. Nicole Funga is the RDA of Fierce Fighting Championship. The toughest resume, the toughest road. But man, she is getting some incredible experience early on in her days. And she's got another tough matchup here. Aaron is a state champion wrestler over in Hawaii at Kamehameha High School. It's a very, very competitive state for high school wrestling. And so I'm excited to see what they both can bring to the table. On top of that, we've also got Molly Rahiman making her comeback after 6 years away. 2017 Fierce Fighting Championship 4 was her last time in the cage against Mina Yushirawadi, who just fought Ludi Alves a couple of months ago. I'm excited for that one as well.
Me too. I think that's going to be a stand-up war, and who doesn't like to watch two scrappy girls throw down? Everybody.
They're very talented, and I was really impressed with Mina when she fought Ludi a couple months ago, despite the loss. And so I'm interested to see how Molly is after that time away and all the things that she has kind of been through, and we'll talk about that on the broadcast a little bit more. But Mina looked as sharp as ever in her last fight, and I'm excited to see what she looks like once again. Robin Weish versus Jose Mendez. That's another big one, Zach. I know I talked to Robin last week for the podcast. Tell me a little bit about what you look forward to in this matchup.
Well, Robin's like, I mean, I'm sure he's heard it. I've heard it. Everybody's like, that's too young to go pro. Like he's too early. I've heard it. Well, here's the thing. We're going to find out real quick because Jose was one of the best. I think he was second in the West for only behind Cole Faust for lightweights as an amateur. Jose fought for us twice. We've seen him in the Fierce Cage twice. Put on a very impressive performance against Malachi Novosel, who I think Malachi is one of the toughest, grittiest dudes in the state. And Jose looked really good in that fight. We're going to find out real quick. And I mean, who am I to say that Robin shouldn't go pro? That's not my job. That's between him and his coaches. And for all the people have messaged me, and I've said the same thing. Who cares what anybody else thinks besides him and his coaches when he's ready to go pro? But he didn't, as he said, he'd fight anybody. I'm pretty sure he called out Julian Ruiz if Julian wanted to come up to 155. And I'm like, that's kind of crazy, right? With Julian's experience and versus his, but the kid believes in himself. I know he trains hard. I know he's talented. And uh, I love that. I love the guys that believe in themselves and wanted to bet on themselves. And so I'm like, I'll give you a fight. And I think this is gonna be. I think it's gonna be a dogfight. To be honest, if I'm being totally honest, I think it's gonna turn into an absolute dogfight.
I do too. I mean, we saw Jose Mendez just a couple of, or actually almost now, it was a year ago, June of last year. It's coming up, that he put on an incredible performance with Malachi Novosel. That was one of the best fights of 2022. And then on the flip side, you've got Robin Weiss. And the other day, I just saw a comment from Darian Orban, one of his old opponents, and he was saying that he's the toughest guy he's ever been in there with. Robin said early on in the podcast last week that he just didn't really feel challenged when he was on the amateur level. And so he feels like he is ready to make that jump up to pro. I also want to make sure that we talk a little bit about Derek Jorgensen versus Anthony Strickland Hicks. Talk to me a little bit about this matchup, what you're looking forward to in it.
I just know that Strickland Hicks is one of the guys from Warrior Camp, trains with Jose Mendez.
Yeah, exactly.
And they're excited about him. Derek Jorgensen, he took a really tough debut fight up a weight class at 155. Probably should have been a 145er all along, and got his jaw broken with a head kick. I mean, and he's ready to get right back in there and get right back to work. I think that talks a lot to who he is and his mental toughness. And I think that, I mean, as amateurs, you see really quick, like when people lost or take a tough loss or whatever, how fast they get back in there. He's ready to get back in there pretty much as soon as he was healthy enough to put in a camp and get going again. So I'm excited for that fight. I think that one, two relative unknowns. Like we just know that Derek's game, and I know the type of camp that Anthony comes from, that I expect him to be game as well.
And then finally, we've got our main event. We've got Julian Ruiz versus Cody Heyman, a fight that was supposed to happen back in January on that stacked Fierce 23 card. It happens here in March at Clearfield High School. Talk to us a little bit about what you look forward to in this matchup. I personally cannot wait for it.
It just needed to happen. Like that was kind of a funny one too, because it was like Julian and his camp like wish Cody well, but we're like, no, what if he pulls out again? We don't want to fight him. And then Cody took a fight in another promotion, and then his opponent fell out. Well, in that whole time, I got told no by about 5 guys to Julian for this date. And 3 of them were 2-0 prospects as well. So it's like, I can't get anybody to say yes to this kid for whatever reason. It wasn't a money issue. I was offering him, I asked, I said, do you need more money? It's just, no, this isn't the right fight for me right now. I'm like, you're an undefeated prospect, so is he. Like, I mean, they just viewed it as too risky of a fight. Circle back to Julian and said, hey man, nobody's saying yes to you, but Cody took another fight. Well, he just lost his opponent and he's available again. And so he's just like, forget it, let's run it. Hopefully he shows up this time. And I think Cody will. He was legitimately sick last time. I don't question him one bit. And I think these are both these pro fights to end the night, this co-main and main event. I think will just gonna have everybody nice and excited for April 21st.
April 21st is absolutely stacked. We're actually going to be promoting that a lot on the broadcast. Cannot wait for it. Really quick, we've just got a couple of minutes here. If you could just throw out some names, some people to look forward to for that April card, and then some final thoughts on that March card, Zach, I'll give it over to you.
This March card is just, it's going to be fun. I love the high school environment. Lights on, lights and fights. That's what Scott Bowler calls it, our head of our athletic commission. Lights and fights. We just flip the lights on, let the kids fight, let the fighters fight. And it's going to be awesome. I'm so excited for April. We have a lot of names that have asked to be on that I think we'll see. Kulu competing for a title, Vili Kulu, Andrew Mickelson will be back in there. Hannah Silva will be back defending her title. Andrew Boquette's back. He put on a great show when he fought for us. And then some of the pros, Zeke Latu, he's under contract. He's back, taking a step up in competition against a really tough guy. Trevor Bradshaw will be back. in the Fierce Cage. Maddie Meacham will be back after she had such a fun fight in January. We're ironing out a main event or co-main event that I think once they drop and contracts are signed, people are going to be very, very excited about.
Well, we cannot wait for it. He is Zack Partridge. Thank you so much for the time, the COO and matchmaker of Fierce Fighting Championship. Zack, we will see you on Friday. Thanks, Saturday, sir. Actually. Well, we'll see you on Friday, too, because we got the weigh-ins.
Friday weigh-ins.
Yeah, we'll see you on Friday, man. Thank you so much for the time. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Blake. Appreciate all you're doing.